Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Jazmin Espinoza. I'm the marketing coordinator here at Mars. And in today's webinar, we'll be covering how Mars air curtains provide superior sanitation and energy efficiency across educational facilities. Our presenter today is Curtis Rosol, Business Development Engineer here at Mars. Just a few quick announcements before we get started. We're hosting 2 gift card raffles, one for attendees and one for those who complete the survey at the end of the webinar. The survey also includes a section where you can indicate if you're interested in hosting a lunch and learn with our team. If that's something you'd like to explore, I highly recommend filling out the survey at the end. And with that, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Curtis to get us started.
Awesome. Thanks, Jasmine. Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you guys are at. My name is Curtis Rosol. I'm a business development engineer here at Mars Air Systems. Today, we're going to be talking about air curtains and their uses specifically in educational facilities, educational buildings. So quick look at what the agenda is going to be. Just going to do, if those of you that have sat in on these, I just start out with a brief overview on how air curtains work and their benefits. And then we'll kind of dive into more of those specific applications, like I talked about, which is going to be focused around schools, universities for the most part. Talk about some specialty applications and then some resources at the very end for you guys that want to do additional research on your own. So the idea is going to be 20 minutes. I'm going to try to stick to that. And let's go ahead and get started here. So again, those of you that have been on these, what I like to do to start is, for those of you not as familiar with air curtains, just give you a brief overview on what they are and how they work, right? So the general idea with an air curtain is what we're doing is we're creating a controlled stream of air over an opening. It's typically a door to separate 2 environments, which is generally separating the interior space from the exterior or the outdoor space of a building, but can also be used to separate interior spaces as well. And we'll talk about that in a little bit here in a sec. Now, generally, how they're installed, how they work in most applications is you have the unit installed directly on the wall right above that door opening. And then you have a door switch, typically that's works in tandem with it. So that door switch basically just turns the unit on when the door opens and then turns the unit off when the door closes. Now, the problem with air curtains is because we're moving air, a lot of times it's hard to really visualize what we're doing with the air curtains. So I like to kind of show this video to start. So this is just simulating, any dirt, dust, debris that would be getting into a building. This is obviously a drive-through window, but the physics behind it can be scaled up, to entry doors, to big dock roll-up doors. As you can see there, it's pretty effective at creating that barrier. So again, I think this is just a good visual representation of how we're using air curtains to prevent that infiltration through openings. Now, the benefits of air curtains, there's quite an extensive list. I like to categorize it into 2 main categories of benefits. That's going to be temperature control or thermal separation, and flying insect control. So those are the main drivers of what we're using air curtains for. And then, like I said, there's a bunch of what I call sub-benefits under those categories. I would almost put UVC and HEPA filtration as sort of a third, maybe different category, which I'll kind of touch on in a little bit here as well, where we can actually use air curtains in tandem with these clean air technologies to, not only use air as a barrier, but also as a method of sanitizing or cleaning the interior space that the air curtain's installed in. So this is a general list of the most common industries we serve. Again, pretty extensive list. These are the main ones based off the data and analytics that we've gathered that we're in. I would imagine that most of you guys probably work to some extent in all of these categories, at least a little bit. Now, obviously, the focus of this webinar is going to be on educational institutions, schools, and universities. So we'll focus on that. But like I said, for those of you that work in these other industries, at least to some extent, it's important to note that the applications that I talk about today for schools can most of the time be applied to these other industries as well. Now, I guess an important note for those of you working directly with school districts, I know a lot of you guys, a lot of schools are on spring break right now. I know a lot of the end of the school year is coming up in the next couple months as well. So again, those of you, I would imagine if you're sitting in on this webinar and you're working with a school district, you have some interest with air curtains in schools. So as this year comes to a close, if you have some sort of excess funds available for your schools as well, and you don't have air curtains as a standard item installed in your schools, this could be a really good opportunity for you guys to possibly try these out, maybe make some purchases or do some testing on your own, and you can get them installed moving forward. Another thing I want to note is we do have a really good industry. We actually have a few industry pages on our website which break down air curtains in the various industries that we serve. One of them obviously being schools. So the image you see here, this is a screenshot of what we have available on our school industry page, and this on the website is actually an interactive rendering. So those of you that haven't visited that page, highly recommend you do that. What's really cool about it is, obviously, like you see here, kind of gives you an idea of those plus signs where air curtains can be used, and then their benefits kind of broken down there. But each plus sign is like I said, it's interactive. So if you're on the website, you can click on all those various pluses, and it'll give you a breakdown of, here is an application for this for a school building, for example. It'll give you, a general rundown on how air curtains can benefit the building being installed over that entry door or whatever. And then it'll give you a couple of most common models that we would install over that entrance. So for example, here you see that education center, there's a plus sign there. It'll just break down, hey, we install low pros standards there. You see there's like a multi-purpose room, couple plus signs in the back there. There's a food convenience stand in the very back. So again, highly recommend going on that page if you're doing more of yourself or your own research in terms of figuring out what are the best applications for schools for these air curtains. Now, kind of going into the specific examples I put together for you guys, so I can talk about these a little bit more. Probably one of the most common is going to be front entry doors, right? And that goes for air curtains in general across all industries. But the ones here, obviously, specifically for schools. So the one you see here, the one on the left that you see here is for a front entrance to the university building. Right now, this is what we call our Phantom Series unit. So the nice thing about this one is it's recessed in the ceiling. So if you're limited on space above the door, or you don't really have an ideal installation spot for it right above the door, you can use one of these units where you can actually install it in the ceiling, and it's not impeding, or it's not going to be really awkward above the door there. Architects really like our Phantom units because they get the benefits of the air curtains and they don't necessarily have to see it in the building. So this is a really good option for those type of applications. The one that you see here was mostly for temperature control. Obviously, entry doors, you got high traffic, especially in hot weather areas or really cold weather areas. You really want to make sure you're maintaining stable temperatures inside the building, for comfort and just overall efficiencies. On the right is a dining hall application. Again, it's an entry door, so temperature control is an issue. Dining halls, also flying insect control can be an issue as well, right? So where there's food, there's going to be flies, or it's at least going to attract the flies. And if you have, like I said, high traffic doors, that's going to be a really big entry point for flies to get in there. So we want to make sure that our doors, our entrances to these dining halls are protected as well. Kind of the next level of this same issue would be school cafeterias, right? So on the left there, that's going to be like the back receiving area of a cafeteria. So you see you got the foods right there on the shelves on the left. This door opens up to the outdoor environment. Especially if you're getting deliveries daily or every other day, these doors can be open for quite a long time. And like I mentioned, if you're in an area where there's food that's just laying out like that, or it's a kitchen, they're cooking food, it's going to be a really easy way for flies to get into that cafeteria, and that's going to obviously create a bunch of problems, right? They could get in, they could contaminate food. So flying insect control is one problem, but there's also a level of sanitation, right? We obviously want to make sure we're preventing any contamination from happening as well. The one you see here is it's one of our NSF units that's listed to NSF 37, so we do have those available. I know that's a lot of times enforced by health inspectors. So if you guys have that requirement on a school project, just know we do have units available for NSF 37. On the right is a cafeteria. It's like a commercial dishwasher, and we've used air curtains for this as well. It's a little bit more of a niche application, but what's nice about these is it's a more cost efficient or cost effective method of drying dishes versus the drying tunnel. It can be retrofitted directly onto the dishwasher itself, like you see here. And the nice thing about that is it doesn't take up additional floor space, right? So if you're limited on your cafeteria or your kitchen space, you can use more of that space for, cooking, cooking materials, things like that, to actually get more food output versus having to worry about creating space for a drying tunnel or something like that. So if square footage is an issue, this is another really good option as well. And like I said, cost efficient too. Odor control. This could be really big for food settings as well. Again, could be around the cafeteria, could be around the dining hall areas. The image that you see on the left there, it's a refuse area. So you see like a large industrial garbage bin in the back there. We have actually one of our UV units installed here, so it's nice with the UV, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a sec here. Is they actually can kill pathogens, right? But they can also kill odors as well. So like I was talking about earlier, right? In those dining halls, in those cafeteria applications, where there's food, there's going to be odors. Where there's odors, there's going to be more than likely a flying insect problem. So what's nice with the UV technology, specifically the UVV technology, is not only do we have the air curtain to prevent flies from getting in, but any odors that could be escaping from the opening or getting out, the UV lamps will help kind of cycle those odors through the unit itself, and it'll help kill those. So that'll actually help prevent odors from getting out and attracting those flies. And then bathrooms, lavatories, we've used air curtains for those applications as well. Again, just preventing odors from getting into other parts of the space, and really just making sure we're containing any odors that could be getting into the rest of the building. Cold storage. So this is another application. Those of you that have been on these webinars before, I've talked about cold storage applications in almost everyone, and I think it's just a very important. It's probably one of those the most important applications in my opinion. The rule of thumb I always say is if there's a bigger temperature difference, you could potentially have a bigger problem, and that's really where air curtains can be the most effective tool for these problems, right? So in cold storage, obviously you have cooler temperatures. Not only is that going to be more expensive if you're losing cold air as the doors open, with deliveries or something like that, but those cooler temperatures can create condensation as well. So if you have condensation, you can have slipping hazards. You can have issues, especially if you got strip curtains, with that condensation getting on the strip curtains, that can make them dirty, make them tough to get really in and out of. So installing air curtains can, like I said, not only prevent that cold air from escaping and reducing the cost of your overall heating and cooling bills, but it can create a safer environment. It can reduce condensation as well, which can also prevent mold growth and things like that too. So really important application there. And then, like I said, it can also reduce the need for plastic strips as well. So it's contactless. So now you don't have to worry about, like I said, those cumbersome or those really cluttery strip curtains from getting in the way, when you're bringing produce or whatever in and out of those cooler rooms. Talking a little bit more about UV specifically with coolers, we've done a few research. We've had a few research opportunities with these. So this is the first one you see here. This is one we did in a walk-in cooler to really test the effectiveness of these UV units inside the cooler spaces. So like I talked about, the idea there is we can use the UV technology to actually clean and sanitize the air. And the thought here was we wanted to see if that could prevent mold or bacteria, mildew growth in these cold storage rooms, which could obviously, cause having to throw away produce and things like that. So the experiment we did here, we basically put in 2 sets of petri dishes inside a cooler room. The first set of petri dishes is the bottom 2 petri dishes you see in the image here. So we basically had a UV unit installed, turned it off. We didn't use it. We left the petri dishes in there for a week, and again, those bottom two Petri dishes is the growth that you saw in those after a week without that air curtain. So really interesting results, but we took those Petri dishes out, put in a fresh set of Petri dishes, and turned the UV function of the air curtain on, which is basically just cycling that interior air and cleaning out any of that airborne mold pathogens that were in there. And we actually left the Petri dishes in there for 2 weeks because we saw virtually nothing after the first week. And as you can see here, even after 2 weeks leaving those Petri dishes in, those top two Petri dishes still had virtually no mold growth. So very promising results. That led us to a second study we did with strawberries, because we felt, the story with Petri dishes is great, but nobody's selling Petri dishes. Nobody's buying Petri dishes for schools, cafeterias, things like that. So we repeated the experiment with strawberries locally here at our factory. And as you can see, got very similar results. And this is an ongoing experiment that we're doing. So we're playing around with more, accurate, cooler temperatures, humidity levels, longer periods of time, just to really dial in the results and making sure, the promising results that we've been getting with these UV studies on increasing the shelf life of produce is actually accurate. So very cool application for air curtains, and something I encourage all of you that are in that cold storage space to really look out for and possibly promote to your customers, or to think about yourself if you are the customer. Last example here I want to share with you guys is classrooms. That's kind of the bread and butter, especially in these K through 12 applications. So the two examples I have here are more science labs and clean rooms, and then portables. So briefly touching on the science labs, the clean rooms, right? Whether that's a high school science lab or a clean room at the university level, these are very controlled environments, right? We're running lab experiments, we're running research tests in these rooms, and ensuring that the ambient atmosphere in there is clean, is sanitized, is obviously very important to get the most reliable results on whatever they're conducting in those rooms. So, again, especially if you have doors opening to the outside, having an air curtain to prevent any dust, airborne pathogens, or dirt from getting into these labs is very important. Like I said earlier too, you can also use these for interior separation as well, just to provide another barrier of separation. And then portable classrooms as well. Again, these aren't designed to be the most efficient buildings, I know. So, obviously maintaining temperatures is really important. Air curtains are a very cost-effective way to do that. And like you see here, you can even install them on the outside of the building, as long as they're, unheated units and they're covered from the elements. A couple specialty applications and features we can offer. 304 stainless steel. If you're in a corrosive environment, that is an option. We do have heat options available. Electric heat is probably the most common, but we can do steam, hot water, and gas as well. Really, the main benefit of heat is to prevent the wind chill effect in cold weather areas. A lot of people think they're used for like supplemental heat. They can be used for that, but that's not the main application of our heated units. They're also used a lot of times in freezer applications to prevent frost buildup on the doors. So just having that heat kind of helps prevent that as well. Keep the water particles, evaporated into the air. Wash down and explosion proof, maybe not super applicable for schools, but it is construction options we have available. Tamper proof construction is something we can do as well. So that basically just requires a proprietary tool to access the unit, so you don't have people, playing around with the settings and things like that. And then last specialty application, kind of like I already talked about, is our clean air series. So particularly, our UV units being a major one there, but we also do have units with HEPA filters available. If that's something that you or your customer prefers, then we can also do bipolar ionization as well. So that pretty much concludes it. Again, these are some resources available. Highly recommend those of you that have not been on our website, go to marsair.com. Like I talked about earlier, definitely recommend looking at our industry pages. Gives you a really good breakdown of applications there. We do have product information available on our website. We also have a YouTube channel. So if you want to do, again, more self-learning, we have, informative type videos on more applications and benefits of air curtains. We also have more instructional videos too, for those of you more on the service side. And then we also do, we are also in specification and quoting softwares as well. So Master Spec, Auto Quotes, those of you that are more on the specification side, we're available on those platforms. And we do have 3D drawings as well, BIM objects and Revit. So that's gonna conclude the PowerPoint. I thank you everyone for your time. I think at this point, we'll probably wait a couple minutes. If you have questions, just go ahead and type them in the chat, and then I will, I'll let Jazmin sort of read those off as they come in.
All right, thanks so much, Curtis. So we do have a question here. Are the UV units safe around people at entry doors?
Yes. Yeah. So definitely can install them at entry doors. That's actually very common in hospitals, waiting rooms. We've done a couple of UV installs there, again, just to clean the air. But no, we make sure the unit is sealed. I know UV is harmful to people with exposure, so the unit is sealed. It's not gonna harm you at all. It actually would probably be a good application for schools, even, you know, K through 12s, right? I'm sure there's a lot of sick kids coming in and out of the entry doors and things like that. And the UV is only going to help, you know, sanitize and make sure that that interior air is clean, and we're mitigating as much, you know, spreading of germs and things like that as we can. So it's a good question.
All right, thank you. We have a few others here. Is 316 stainless steel available or just 304?
We can do 316. That would probably just be a special request from us. So just make sure you reach out to your local rep to get that quoted. But our typically we do 304, but we can do 316 if it's needed.
How to get access to product selector program?
Yeah, so that's available on our website. So really, when you just go, you can go to marsair.com, and it should just be on the home screen. There's a button that says, I think it says build your air curtain. It's a very simple tool to use. You just click on that button and it'll just ask, you know, what's your application, what's your door height, and that'll kind of get you going on a couple of the, you know, most recommended units for your application.
And I will also include that link for the Build Your Air Curtain tool in the chat as well. All right, next question. What specification division does it fall under and what would it be called?
Yeah, so it depends on where it's getting specified. For HVAC, it's under Division 23. That's where you would specify the air curtains for the, you know, on the mechanical side. Or for food service, it's under Division 11, I believe, is with the food service specifiers.
What is the warranty?
Yeah, so it depends on the product. Generally, our unheated units are 5 years. I believe our electric heat is 1 year. But again, it really depends on the product. But majority of the ones for schools, so our low pro standards is a 5-year warranty.
Next question, is there a copy of the PowerPoint and will it be available? Yes, I will be sending out a link for the PowerPoint presentation probably by the end of the week, along with the link for the YouTube as well, so for the recording. Next question is, for grid ceiling installs, what other options are there besides the Phantom models?
For grid ceiling installs, I'm assuming that would mean like recessed. So the Phantom model would be the only one that can actually be recessed. Now, I will say we do have various different models of the Phantom, if that makes sense. So we have a Phantom 8, for example. That's, you know, 7 to 8 foot installs. That's more for like low ceiling entry door applications. But we also have the Phantom 10, which is kind of that next level up. And then we also have a Phantom 12. So I believe we can do Phantoms all the way up to 16 feet. It really just depends on, you know, kind of the size of the one you need and the application.
Kurt, if I can chime in, this
Yep.
is Andy, one of the engineers here. We have had some applications where a customer didn't want to devote that much visible space in the ceiling grid, so rather than using a Phantom, which has both its intake and its discharge on the bottom face of the unit. They have installed either a low pro or a standard or something up above the ceiling and just piped the discharge down with a nozzle extension. So it takes up a lot less space. It's less visible that way. The disadvantage there is that you're drawing air from above the ceiling, which may not be the cleanest. So it's kind of a niche application. Wouldn't recommend it for general purpose. Usually we would recommend someone look at one of the Phantom series.
Thanks, Andy. Yep.
And then I have also included submittal links within the chat in case you guys want to review those Phantom options as well. Okay. All righty. Well, I think there are no other questions. Andy, there is something in the chat in regards to what you just answered. So if you could just review that there. And let's just close it off with one final question. Can air curtains help reduce heating and cooling costs in schools that have doors opening frequently throughout the day?
Absolutely. I would almost say that's going to be where they're going to be most effective. So especially, and I'm not sure if I noted that earlier, but when we're talking about quote unquote high traffic applications, that's where you're going to have your biggest problem, right? Because the longer the doors are open, the easier it's going to be for cooled air to escape the building. So we have what's called a time delay feature that we typically do in those high traffic situations. Basically, what that means is the air curtain doesn't turn off, right as the door closes. We kind of leave it running for an extended amount of time. That way, if the doors are opening and closing, we have the air curtain continuously running, so it works a little bit more effectively, and it's not cycling the unit on and off. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, the more potential for, let's say, conditioned air to escape, we're using air curtains to make sure that stays in the building. And, that's obviously just going to reduce the cycling of, you might have a 50, 100-ton compressor in a central air conditioning unit, right? And if the less you have to cycle that, the more you can just maintain the interior space with those air curtains. It's absolutely gonna lower the cost of your heating and cooling bills. And then you can imagine it's the same sort of thought on the other side too for heating as well. If it's really cold outside, you want to make sure that heat stays in the building as well.
Okay, one final question. We'll close it off with this one here that I found in the chat. What is the maximum installation height for your biggest industrial air curtain?
Yeah, I believe we can go all the way up to 32 feet. So that's really 32 feet is the largest, and we do anything as small as 4-foot or 3-foot drive-through windows, and we have everything in between. But if you have something that you feel might be custom, obviously reach out to your local rep or reach out to us. If you don't know who that is, we can get you in contact with them, and we can provide you something tailored as well. Sometimes if it's really, really tall, but it's not as wide, we can do vertical installations as well. And sometimes, stack the units on top of each other. So we always feel like we do have a solution for the majority of applications.
All right. Thank you, Curtis. So I have included the feedback form in the chat. Thank you guys so much for joining us for today's webinar. That feedback form is just a great way for you to share any topics you'd like for us to cover in the future. If you'd like to schedule a lunch and learn, you could also have that noted there as well. And then if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to our team. We really enjoy having these customer-facing webinars. And we should be hosting another one, I would say, in the next month and a half. More information to come. So look out for your email. If you are not receiving our emails, feel free to reach out to me, Jazmin Espinoza. I am the marketing coordinator here at Mars. And that concludes today's webinar on educational facilities. Thank you so much, Curtis. We appreciate all of that information.
Yep. Thanks, everyone. I hope everyone has a good day. Take care.